Hello everybody, it's the Painting Dad here for another episode of Thousand Suns in 3rd Edition. Today, we are talking about the Prosperine Arcanas. So, might be a long episode. There's a lot of complicated and nuanced subject matter involved in these rules, but I'm going to try to give some outlines of the rules, some helpful tips on how to memorize these rules, but then also how to use these in like a tactical sense, an army building sense, and we'll cover some of that. And this is specifically the Prosperine Arcanas. I like Arcanas better, but the Prosperine Arcanas. This is not covering the core rulebook psychic disciplines, and this is not covering how to specifically use psychic powers. I will talk about, we will do an episode on how to use psychic powers very soon. So if you can be patient with me, we can cover that, and that'll help kind of give more context to these arcanas and the disciplines. So we will get there, but we got to do this one episode at a time. I want to talk about the arcanas because this is a very iconic part of the Thousand Suns rules. So we're going to cover these today, and then we'll be doing more as we continue on. But this is Thousand Suns in 3rd Edition, Part 2, Prosperine Arcanas. So, a general overview of these arcanas, okay? I can read the rule. I'll read a bit of the rules myself, but there's just a few things that are worth noting for all of these arcanas. So the first thing is that it's 10 points per unit to give them an arcana. The Thousand Suns Rite of War, their Legion Rite of War, is not the arcanas. The Legion Rite of War is +1 willpower to all of your non-vehicle units. The arcanas are an extra upgrade. So it is important to remember it does cost 10 points per unit to equip, but it is on every non-vehicle unit you can give these powers. Alright, you can also give it to dreadnoughts, bike units, artillery like rapier batteries. You can give it to all those units. They can all have an arcana, which is a minor psychic discipline, for 10 points extra. The powers manifest in the same manner as the core book psychic powers. So you're still rolling the willpower check. It's the 2d6 roll. You're trying to get equal to or under your willpower, and doubles are a bad thing. So they manifest in the same manner as their equivalent core book psychic powers. You can only cast one power per unit per turn. All right, and a unit is all of the models together. So if you have a character joined in a unit, that character is now part of that unit. So even if the character has a separate Prospering Arcana, they cannot both cast a power in a single player turn. You can alternate a power and a reaction, but those are different turns, and you can do that. But one power per unit per turn. You can use these powers when a unit has a status effect active on them, or if they're locked in combat, or both. You can still use these powers. So there's some of these powers are relevant in that, like the Athanaean power we'll talk about later, is one that's really relevant when you're already statused or locked in combat. But unless it's specifically stated otherwise, you are allowed to use these while you have a status and while you're locked in combat. So there's no rules against those specific instances in using these powers. And yeah, of course, you roll the 2d6. Your target is equal to or less than your willpower. We talked about that. I don't know why I put that in the slide. Now, one major difference between the arcanas and the core disciplines, the core psychic disciplines, is the result of Perils of the Warp. Perils of the Warp is caused by rolling a double on those two dice. Double 1, double 2, blah, blah, blah. Doubles. In the core book, the double you roll determines what type of Perils of the Warp you suffer, whether it's a warp rupture or an etheric feedback. And both of those are very bad. It's either a lot of guaranteed wounds or you're just statused, which can just wreck a unit depending on the timing. The Arcana Perils of the Warp, it says anytime, hold on, let me read this. If a model is manifesting a psychic power, psychic weapon, or psychic reaction gained from a Prosperine Arcana, if they suffer the effect of Perils of the Warp, do not roll on the Perils of the Warp table. Instead, the unit suffers D3 wounds with an AP of 2 and a damage of 1, which ignore all cover saves and damage mitigation rolls. Invulnerable saves may be taken against these wounds as normal, and they're allocated as if they were inflicted by a shooting attack. So, instead of the crazy amount of damage you take from the core discipline or the core book perils or taking a status, you take D3 AP2 wounds. No feel, no pain, no shroud, just invuln saves. And that's it. So much less deadly to fail, or to not just to fail, to suffer Perils of the Warp from the Arcanas than the normal discipline. All right, another caveat with these weapons that are gained through these Arcanas can only be used by one model per unit per Arcana. So you have a squad with Raptora and you have Crushing Force. That squad, one model in that squad can use Crushing Force. If that squad is joined by a character who is also a Raptora practitioner, only one model in that unit can use Crushing Force, whether that's your character or a model in the squad. Now, if your character is a Pavoni user, then your character can use Blood Boil, and someone from the squad can use Crushing Force. So you can mix and match those Arcanas. They can each use a weapon, but it has to be different Arcanas. That is the caveat with the weapons. All right, another thing, targets for the blessings, so specifically the blessings power, must have the Thousand Suns trait, and all of them are the same in this manner, where your target doesn't say anything like all models must have the Raptora trait and the Thousand Suns trait. You can mix and match your Arcanas, and we're going to talk about that a lot, mixing and matching Arcanas with characters and squads, but the only requirement for targeting units in this, aside from most of them target their own unit, but the only big requirement here is they have to have the Thousand Suns trait. Okay, so you cannot target other legions, but you can target any Thousand Suns unit that gains the Thousand Suns trait. All right, so to get into these powers, we're going to go through all 6 Arcanas, because there are 6 of them. There are 5 of them in the Libers, and I'm going to read the number 6 out of my new Forges of Saturn Journal Tactica, and we're going to go through them. I'm going to explain their powers a bit. I am, we'll outline a few things, and we'll talk a bit after here, but let's just get right into them, and let's start with Raptora. All right, so Raptora has 2 abilities here. The first one is Crushing Force. Crushing Force is a psychic weapon. It's a ranged weapon. Okay. Just to give you the quick outline of the stats, it is range 12, firepower 1, range strength 9, AP 4, damage 2. Its special rules are Armor Bane and Force Damage, and it's a psychic weapon. That's its trait. Now, an important thing about psychic weapons, you do not have to roll to manifest a psychic weapon. They just count as a gun the model's equipped with or a melee weapon the model's equipped with, depending on the type of psychic weapon it is. But there's no roll to use the psychic weapon. All right? Very important difference between the weapons and the powers. Okay? And they don't count as powers either. So you can use a weapon and the power from a particular Arcana in the same turn. So weapon is just an extra gun a guy has, and with these Arcanas you can choose the model that uses the weapon every turn they shoot. So we talk about Crushing Force. It's very short range, 12 inches, one shot. It's high strength. Strength 9 is very good. The AP isn't great. AP 4 doesn't matter when you're shooting at vehicles. It's an anti-armor weapon. All right, it's 2 damage. It has force damage. And I want to talk about this force here for a minute because this is a point of contention. But it is an anti-armor attack at close range. So the force damage, it's optional. you don't have to choose to activate the force ability on this weapon. What force damage will do is it'll double the damage characteristic if you pass the willpower check. So it'll go from damage 2 to damage 4. Damage 4 from a one-shot, like, 10-point extra weapon that's like half of this Arcana's ability. Very strong. It's a very strong ability. Now, the force damage, I may or may not be correct about this next statement, and it's hard to tell. There's different interpretations here, but I wrote down that it only suffers Arcana perils if it goes wrong. So the force rule states that a model makes a willpower check, and if they pass, they get to, activate the force. If they fail, they don't. If they roll a doubles, they suffer a perils of the warp. It kind of comes in conflict with the Arcana rules. The Arcana rules state if a model is manifesting a psychic power, psychic weapon, or psychic reaction gained from a Prosperine Arcana, suffer the effect of perils of the warp, do not roll on the table. Instead, take the D3 AP2 damage 1 wounds. It's difficult to decide. Like, on one hand, you don't manifest psychic weapons, and that wording there makes me think that at some point when they were writing the rules, they had made it so you had to check to use a psychic weapon, and they took that out. So then, with that interpretation, you're not manifesting the weapon. This is checking for force. Like, the weapon's already manifested, it's in his hand or whatever, or it's, the lightning coming out of his fingers. So the willpower check you would make, you would suffer the normal perils results, which could be a lot of wounds on your unit, or just straight up like stun the squad. However, there is a way to read this. If a model manifesting a psychic power, psychic weapon, or psychic reaction gained from Prosperine Arcana suffers the effects of perils of the warp, do not roll, you replace it. You could argue, and I probably would argue this point if I were talking to someone who had the authority to change this, that the wording is you're in the process of manifesting or using that weapon when you're rolling for the force check. And if you're in process of using the weapon and then you perils with a force roll, you are still in process, you suffered the effect from a perils, so you replace it with the D3 wounds. That is a way to interpret it. I don't know which one's right. To be honest, this is worth, I would say, email Games Workshop's FAQ email address. You can find it. Maybe I can find it and post it in the description or something. I will email them about this just to see if they can FAQ this. But the way I will play this with my group is that I will play it as that I suffer the core book perils and not the Arcana perils. As much as I want this to be the Arcana perils because it's way less deadly, way less impactful, I think that the way to play this right now is to play the more like opponent-friendly approach and just suffer the core book perils. So, something worth looking up. This is the only weapon that does this. The only one to worry about. I don't have to ramble on too much after this on this specific power. But force damage on an Arcana is a really weird spot, and I'm curious what your guys' thought is on it. Alright, continuing on with Crushing Force. It is comparable to a Melt-A-Gun. Not quite as strong, but it is higher strength. If you do force it, damage 4 is really good at 12 inches. On a single weapon from like a tactical squad mini, just like an incidental shot at a rhino, almost killing a rhino in one shot, it can be really good. I would compare it in similar role to a Melt-A-Gun with its usage. All right, Kine Shield. This is a psychic reaction, and it's a blessing. So timing is important. It triggers at the start of step 3 of a shooting attack. That's important. That is after an enemy declares their target. So they declared your unit as a target, but before they choose their weapons. All right. So For your sake, I'm sure most opponents will be fine, you know, when you don't have the exact time, you know, you're going to shoot my unit, I'm going to use it. But it's before they choose their weapons for their attack, but after they target the unit. If you fail, so you take a willpower check. If you pass, you get the ability. If you fail, your reaction point is refunded. Another very important part of these psychic reactions. A lot of them, your reaction point is refunded if you fail your willpower check. Okay, something very important to remember, because I feel like there's a lot of Thousand Sons players out there that are going to miss out on extra reactions because they just assume the moment you say you're going to use the reaction, the point is spent. Your point is refunded if you fail the willpower check. Okay, next. If you pass your willpower check, now you can still perils here. Any doubles is still a perils whether you succeed or fail. Okay, it's the D3 AP2 wounds. If you pass, you get a 4+ shroud damage mitigation roll. Okay, this is after an armor or an invuln or a cover save. You get an extra 4+ shot at saving that wound. That's before damage is applied, so it's just every wound you get an extra 4+ save. Very good. All right, it's very strong reaction. More importantly, this reaction, once it's triggered, it lasts until the end of the attack subphase in the shooting phase. The end of the subphase. So it's not just for one attack. This lasts until every unit in the enemy army has used their shooting attacks. All right, because the next subphase is the morale subphase. So keep this up, all right? You put up the force field, and the dude that's holding the force field up is holding the force field for the entire shooting attack. Okay, just keep that in mind. The force field didn't just pop up and leave, all right? It's the Gungans on Naboo. So it lasts until the end of the subphase. Very important, extremely strong reaction. Just ignoring 50% of the failed saves through the entire shooting phase. Very strong. Absolutely incredible. Incredible Arcana. Very strong stuff. All right, next, get into Pyrae. Pyrae is next. Let me turn my page here. So, Pyrae, we have 2 abilities. First one, Inferno Shield. This is a psychic power, and it's a blessing. All right, so this goes on your own squad. And it happens at the end of step 2 of the fight subphase. That is after weapons are declared. Let's see if I have it. Yes, after weapons are declared and initiatives steps are figured out. So you get into a fight. Both opponents choose all the weapons their models are going to use. You determine whose initiative is what when people go, and then you choose this ability. All right, it doesn't happen during a charge. It doesn't happen at the very start. It doesn't happen during challenges. This happens at the point which you choose weapons and you set initiatives. Very important, because this whole ability works off of different initiative steps. So if your opponent's going to make everybody go at the same initiative step, don't worry about it. This is not a great ability unless your opponent has 3 or 4 initiative steps happening. So it is very niche. Most of the time, the risk of perils, even the D3 wounds, the risk of those D3 AP2 wounds on your own squad outweighs most of its uses. There are some abilities when you're fighting crazy command squads and veterans, or those squads where they equip every model with different weapon to try to take on all roles. Perfect for Inferno Shield. You're going to put so many D6 AP- strength 4 wounds on your opponent. Because that's what it does at the end of every initiative step. If the opponent scored any hits, they just take D6 hits, strength 4. This is going to put a lot of wounds on your opponent the more initiative steps they're attacking at. It's kind of a weird way to think of a combat. Doesn't matter if they hit first, if they hit last, however many times. Every initiative step, they cause a hit, you hit them with D6 hits back. Most of the time, it's not going to be worth it. The risk definitely outweighs its use. So it's a niche ability. It can be good in specific instances, though. All right, Burning Grasp. This is a weapon. Let's just say that's a melee weapon. All right, It is. Initiative modifier is your initiative, so it's I. That's not a 1 if you read it. It's an I. Don't like the font, but it's initiative, standard initiative. It is 1 attack. Okay, it's not, the attack is an I, it's not +1, it is 1 attack. That's how many attacks you get with this. Strength 8, AP 3, 2 damage. Its special rules, it has critical hit 6+, breaching 5+, and armor bane. So, 1 attack with the weapon is very important to remember. This is not your model's normal attack value, just a single attack. All right. If you can manage to hit, you have a higher weapon skill than your opponent when you're using this, you can knock out a veteran, a Space Marine veteran. The AP 3 is good, but the 2 damage you really want to go after like infantry, like Terminators or Dreadnoughts, things like that. But with the AP 3, and it does breach on a 5+, which is nice, it's good. But the 1 attack, your odds are very low of triggering this. So probably the best use that you'll get out of this will be against like the rear armor of vehicles, things armor 12 and lower in the rear. So you run into melee, you get an extra attack, damage 2 with a small chance of a critical hit 6+ of making it damage 3. But you don't have to worry about your breaching there. You're most likely going to be hitting the vehicle on 2s with it being a vehicle. So that's probably the best use case for this, is to give the squad a chance to just put that extra bit of damage on a vehicle to wreck it. The Rhinos, Predators, maybe Sicarans, kind of those different vehicles. And yeah, of course, the critical 6+ will rarely happen. I would not get, it's a 4-turn game. At the very most, you're going to be using this 8 times. At like a perfect scenario, and at that point you're getting a critical hit maybe once in that game. Otherwise, maybe once every other game you're getting a critical hit, and even then it's AP 3 and it's only a 3rd damage point. So and if you're hitting a vehicle, the critical hit, it'll give you extra damage but doesn't auto pin the armor. There's a whole thing with that. But in general, the critical hit, the breaching aren't so much something to keep in mind. It's essentially kind of an extra minor melee attack to help you, take down a vehicle, get those extra couple wounds on a lighter vehicle. All right, Pavoni. Pavoni is great. This one has like the coolest imagery, I feel like, out of all these Arcanas. Their first ability is Stoneform. Stoneform is a psychic reaction, and it is a blessing on your own unit. So this happens at the start of step 3 again. So start of step 3, I believe we said, was before the enemy chooses their weapons, but after they declare the target. All right, so they already declared to shoot at your unit, but they haven't said like, hey, I'm going to use the las cannon instead of the heavy bolter or whatever, doing that stuff. So that's when you choose this reaction. Again, reaction point is refunded if the willpower check is failed. It's a very important part of this. So you can refund that reaction point. What this does, adds +2 to the toughness of your unit. All right, so the entire unit for this shooting attack, they get +2 toughness. It's great, it can possibly stop some weapons from wounding you altogether, using on like a dreadnought or something, get some lighter weapons. But the important difference between this and Raptora, this reaction only lasts until the end of the current attack. So your dreadnought gets hit with something, you put +2 toughness with Pavoni with Stoneform, you get the power, your +2 toughness, they're done shooting you. The enemy is free to shoot at that dreadnought for the rest of the subphase, and your dreadnought can't react to that anymore. So it has much more limited use compared to Raptora, just because it doesn't last the entire subphase. So +2 toughness, just the current attack. Blood Boil. So Blood Boil is a psychic weapon. It is a ranged weapon, and we'll read the profile real quick. It is range 12, firepower 1, range strength 4, AP 2, 2 damage, and its special rule is it's poison 2+. All right, so let's think about this. You get one shot. It's AP2. It's 2 damage, so it ignores every armor save in the game. It's 2 damage, so it'll kill elite units, Terminators, veterans, that kind of stuff. And it's poison 2+. So you're wounding any infantry on a 2+. All right, so we imagine an ideal scenario. You give this to a Centurion that is ballistic skill 5. That means they are hitting on a 2. They're wounding on a 2. You say the veteran tactical marine gets no save, and they just outright die. So you boil their blood until they die. You don't get armor saves when your blood is boiling, you know. But very strong single infantry target killer. Now, I do think that most likely this kills a marine every turn. The odds are in your favor here, and again, you don't have to take a psychic check to use this weapon. No willpower checks. This is just a bonus weapon that you paid 10 points for a squad to use once a turn. Okay, so you want to pick off random infantry. You know, you take minis with Pavoni. It's such an easy weapon to use. Yeah, no willpower check. Man, I said this. I'm covering things really fast. So yeah, it's great against Terminators and veterans. Terminators will still get their invulnerable save. Something to keep in mind, but it is still easy damage, especially those Terminators since they're toughness 5. These Saturnine Terminators are toughness 6. So, you know, it's pretty funny when you go up against your opponent and you start throwing poison 2+, AP2 damage abilities at your opponent's Saturnine Terminators, and they can't do anything about it. Or, you know, in an ideal scenario, someone has their Primarch running around without a bodyguard, and you just boil his blood with your entire army or something like that, you know, because you can kill Primarchs with this on a 2+, and they're getting an invuln save, but that's it. So very, very strong anti-infantry weapon. All right, on to Corvidae, and this might be one a lot of people are excited about. This is the one I see the most excitement about from the kind of the greater Thousand Suns community, and the specific reason is this power right here, Fated Shots. Fated Shots is a power, it's a blessing. So at the start of step 4 of your shooting attack, that's after weapons are declared, you declare weapons in step 3, start of step 4, you choose to use this power. You make your willpower check. There's no like refund because, you know, it's power in your own turn. All right, and if you pass, all non-blast weapons in this unit get rending 5+. Now, rending, for those not familiar, rending 5+ means that you rolled a hit with your squad or your unit's attacks, so their weapons, let's say bolters, okay? Let's say tactical squad. You're throwing 20 bolter shots. You rolled a hit. Normally, a tactical squad needs 3+ to hit. You rolled a hit, then you rolled a wound, and then, you know, enemy takes an armor save. Rending 5+ is every 5+ to hit automatically wound your target. And the wound roll counts as a natural 6. So you auto wound, and it counts as a 6 to wound. Where this is important is with breaching weapons. That is the most important synergy with this weapon. And Thousand Suns have a lot of synergy with these breaching weapons with Fated Shots. So breaching is on a wound roll of X, let's say breaching 6+, it's a wound roll of 6. That attack counts as AP2, meaning it ignores the enemy's armor save. Okay, so you can imagine the amount of firepower and destruction you get out of an ability that gives you rending 5+ on any non-blast range weapon you can find. Well, what are some good examples of weapons with breaching X that would benefit from a rending 5+? I am calling this the strongest power in 3.0 currently. I am calling it that. So here are 3 good examples of units that really love this. All right, and the Fated Shots are actually not on the Inductia. I don't know why I put the Inductia. They don't benefit from that. So let's ignore them for now. We'll talk about them later. But autocannons. Autocannons are possibly the worst offender of this, probably into the OP, like unfun territory of this ability. a normal autocannon profile, let's say on a heavy support squad, right? They're expensive. They're 20 points each, but 2 shots, strength 7, AP 4, 2 damage, and then they're breaching 6+, and they're heavy firepower. So you stand still, they're 3 shots each. So if we take just an example, and I'll do some quick like head math here, a squad of 10 is about like 350 points or so, a squad of 10. And let's shoot out like a Saturnine Dread, okay, a toughness 8 Saturnine Dread. You're throwing 30 shots if you stand still at 48 inches. Okay, let's say you get your faded shots off, you're rending 5+. 30 shots, 10 of those hits, on average, mathematically, 10 of those dice are rends. So from your first die roll of 30 dice, you got 10 wounds at AP 2 that are 2 damage each, which statistically kills the Dreadnought without even rolling to wound. And that's every turn this squad can do this. Another one, so that one is, there are lots of units with autocannons. I know the Tartarus Siege Terminators are also really disgusting one with this. But another great weapon for this is the Aetherfire Plasma. So the Thousand Suns unique plasma, it's only range 18 inches. They're 2 shots each, strength 6, AP 4, 2 damage, which is unique, relatively unique to plasma guns in this game. They're breaching 6 up and they don't overload. There's no overcharge function for Aetherfire Plasma, but that weapon is perfectly suited to faded shots. The breaching 6 up, the 2 damage, the no overload. If you can get a faded shots off on a tactical support squad, you're paying, 250 points or so for that tactical support squad. You're nearly killing that Saturnine Dreadnought on the hit roll. You'll kill, I've killed like Thanatars in one shot, just run up and one shot them from 18 inches. You kill stuff really quick with that. Not quite as efficient as the autocannons, but the Aetherfire looks cool. So you're doing that. And again, ignore the Inductee. I don't know why I put that in. Corvidae Faded Shots, I do believe, is the strongest power in the edition. Strongest psychic power. So something to remember. It's great. Please don't overdo it. All right, we don't want to be the Legion that everybody hates to play because we just bring autocannon squads and melt everything in front of us. But that said, it's fun when you get these kind of abilities off and you can do like the cool stuff like kill the big Dreadnought or the Terminator squad that's stomping up the board, the Justaran Terminators, and you just kind of wipe them out. Yeah, it can have some fun moments, but we don't want to overdo that. All right. On to the other ability that probably nobody else knows about. Paths of Consequence is a power, and it's a curse. There aren't many curse effects in the game, but this is, I think, is the only curse in the Arcanas. It happens in the effects subphase of the start phase, which is basically the only subphase of the start phase of your turn. So the effects subphase comes up more often with Thousand Suns than everybody else, but it's important to remember the effects subphase of the start phase. It's a curse. What does a curse do? Well, you don't roll the willpower check on a curse. Thousand Suns bonus willpower doesn't matter. Your target rolls the willpower check. If the target passes their willpower check, the power fails. If they fail the willpower check, the power succeeds. The curse succeeds. Okay? If that is simple enough. All right, they have to fail it. They're trying to resist it, is basically. They're trying to resist the curse. All right, if they roll the perils, if they roll a double, the focus, which is your Thousand Sun squad using this power, the focus suffers the perils of the warp. All right, so curses are much more difficult to get working than blessings are. All right, something to remember about curses. Now, something important to remember, and I'll go through what this ability does, but something important to remember, you cannot use Paths of Consequence and Faded Shots in the same turn. They're both powers that happen during your turn. We don't have a reaction and a power, a weapon and a power, weapon reaction. We don't have that combo. It's 2 powers. So most likely, if your unit is up and moving, Faded Shots is the one that you're going to lean toward. And Paths of Consequence is kind of like a very niche secondary power. All right, and real quick, what this power does at the start, in the effects subphase, at the start phase, if you succeed, you pick a model within 18 inches of line of sight. They fail the willpower check, which means your power succeeds. That unit, until the start of your next turn, so for an entire, like, I guess, battle round, entire both players' turns, they're -2 to their movement characteristic to a minimum of 0. And the first time they move in a given phase, they have to take a dangerous terrain test. That does mean moving in the movement phase. That means if they charge in the charge subphase and the assault phase, if they fall back, when those happen in their respective phases, they are taking a dangerous terrain test the first time they move in a given phase. All right, the routing and fallbacks happen during the movement phase, and they wouldn't be routing and falling back in the same turn. But whenever they make a movement, the first one in the phase, they take dangerous terrain. Now, dangerous terrain isn't particularly deadly. You roll a die for all the models in the unit. On a roll of 1, they take a wound. I think they get an armor save. If they fail, it's a 1 damage hit to the squad. It's not auto-killing models anymore. We're not doing any of that. It's just a wound on the unit. All right. It does work on vehicles, though. All right. If you want a chance to plink wounds off of a vehicle, you can put this on a vehicle. You can target vehicles with this power. And if they fail that danger, and they're -2 movement, which is always, it's good to slow things down. But it does give them a chance to suffer that damage, and vehicles can't take armor saves, so if they roll a 1, they just take a wound or a damage. So that's what happens when vehicles fail damage or fail dangerous terrain checks. But yeah, and the one use that I feel like this really comes in handy is with really slow, closer range units. And the one I can think of more than others is Saturnine Terminators, or maybe Saturnine Dreadnought. Close range weapons, someone's using that inversion beamer or those plasma bombards. They're sitting on the other side of the board. This weapon only has an 18-inch range. So if you're in range to use it, they're in range to shoot this squad. But if you can get it off, then you're looking at Saturnine Terminators with a 3-inch move. And they're not getting anywhere in the game. A 4-turn game, losing any movement on those slow units is... can be really debilitating. It can ruin battle plans. So it has some uses, but man, when you're comparing that with Fated Shots, there's not much of a comparison. Fated Shots is why you take Corvidae. All right, Paths of Consequence is a nice extra. If you see a good use and you have a case for Paths of Consequence, and you want to tell me about it in the comments, please do. I love hearing people's out of the box ideas for all of these powers and all of these abilities and everything, and I'm happy to try them in games and to see where I can use them in those fun random uses that catch people off guard. Great stuff. Next one, Athanaean. All right, the Athanaean power. So their first power for Athanaean is Clarity. Clarity is a power and it is a blessing. So it happens in the effects subphase of the start phase, just like the Paths of Consequence from Corvidae. So it's at the start of the turn. Very, very important with this power. You target a unit within 18 inches and line of sight. And again, when you target units with these blessings, they have to have the Thousand Suns trait. Okay? You cannot target Solar Auxilia units. You can't target militia. You can't target demons. You can't target... your allied Sons of Horus or whatever. You can't do that. It has to be Thousand Suns units you're targeting with this, all right? But line of sight, 18 inches, Thousand Suns units, you target a unit. And again, in the start phase, right, the effects subphase. You pass your will check, you immediately remove a tactical status on the unit. This is incredibly good. It's so practical for a game where statuses fly around a lot in most of the games. Statuses stop your units from scoring. They stop them from moving or from shooting. They stop them from, striking an initiative in combat. There's so many things that statuses wreck in your army. And just to be able to pass a leadership 8 or willpower 8, willpower 9 psychic check, and you just pull that status off, very strong. Incredibly strong and useful ability that's not like, in my mind, this one, you don't use this one and your opponent just like feels terrible. They don't lose their 400 point squad of Terminators after you use this ability like Fated Shots, but this one is possibly the more well-rounded and useful power. It's very strong. I like to use this one on backline units. So I'm thinking, not necessarily like all the way in the back line, but even things like your Rapier laser batteries, you can do this and you can still fire your weapons. The Augur Command and Control Squad is my favorite for this because I think it's also thematic. You sit behind cover with that squad and deal out like cool extra reaction points, and then you just use clarity on squads as an extra thing. Tactical squads, this is great for tactical squads. You can target your own unit with this ability. And remember, you can use these abilities while you have a status. So your squad is panicked. You can use clarity on your own squad and remove the panic. And it happens before the move phase. So your unit gets to act as if everything is normal for the rest of that turn once you remove that status. Very, very good utility out of this ability. It does stack with Nuncio Voxes. So if you guys are familiar with Nuncio Voxes do a very similar thing to this ability. They happen in the effect subphase. It's attached to, you can do it once per commander on the battlefield. So there's a limit to that, but it does stack. So you have a tactical squad, the Nuncio Vox and Athanaean. They get 2 statuses on them. You can use both of them. You take the leadership check on the or the cool check on the command model. You take your willpower check on your own squad. You take off 2 statuses, and it turns a game on its head. It goes from I'm not scoring 4 points on this objective, and maybe my opponent is, to like that 4-point squeeze like swap that can just make the game. It can completely turn the game around. So very good ability. You can also use this multiple times onto a single unit. So you have multiple squads around the battlefield with the Athanaean Arcana. You can target a single squad multiple times. It's just a single squad can't cast a power multiple times. So you have a squad loaded down with 3 status, a big Terminator squad. You can just start using different Athanaean squads and pulling those statuses off of them. So again, very strong. You can kind of like spread the love. You can concentrate it. Very strong ability. And again, remember, you can use this while statused or locked in combat. When you have a status on your unit and you're in combat, it's very debilitating. You strike at initiative 1. So being able to just pull that off in the beginning of your turn, very strong. Very, very good ability. All right. The second thing here is a psychic weapon, Emanation of Dread. It is a ranged weapon. All right. I essentially consider it a 3-shot bolter profile. It's range 24 inches. It's firepower 3, range strength 4, AP dash, so no AP, 1 damage, and it has panic 1 as a special rule. It's a great weapon. It doesn't look like much, but when you have it on, again, a tactical squad, you just have a random tactical marine throwing out Emanation of Dread instead of his bolter. It's the same number of shots a bolter will get at the most. Most of your targets don't have a 5+ armor save, so the AP doesn't matter. And all this has to do is inflict a wound. The enemy doesn't have to take us, it's before saves, all right? Before saves happen. If you inflict a wound, so you roll that 4+ to wound the marine, they get the panic 1 token. That's all it takes. You have to hit, you have to wound, panic 1 token. Whether they pass the save or fail. You inflict panic 1, and it's just an extra status on the unit. Fantastic stuff. I went too far, but great ability. I love using it. I put it on my tactical squads. It is a solid ability to use solid Arcana overall. So let me get out my Forges of Saturn book here, if you'll give me just a second. We have the Osiraean Arcana. So Osiraean has some specific caveats to it. Only specific models in a Thousand Suns army can be equipped with the Osirian Prosperine Arcana. Those are Saturnine Terminator Infantry and any Walker. So Praetor and Saturnine Terminator Armor, Centurions and Saturnine Terminator Armor, Saturnine Terminator Command Squads, Saturnine Terminator Squads, and any unit entirely composed of models with the Walker type. Okay, so it's basically any of your Dreadnoughts is what we're looking at. Those units can take the Osirian Prosperine Arcana. Okay, so we have their abilities. First one is Psychometry. And I'm pronouncing it Psychometry, not Psychometry, because that sounds weird to me. So Psychometry. Psychometry is a power, and it is a blessing. Right? It is the start of step 3 of a shooting attack, and it is before weapons are declared. Right? Important to remember. So you're going to shoot. All right? You decide you want to shoot at an enemy unit. You roll for this power. If it fails, if it succeeds, afterwards, you decide the weapons you're going to use. Okay, and that's very important with some certain weapons. Okay, and we'll talk about this here in just a moment. You target your own unit if they have the Thousand Suns trait. Again, they don't all have to have the Osirian Arcana. That means if you have a Praetor and Saturnine armor joined to a normal Terminator squad, or some like a tactical veteran squad or something crazy, they benefit from the power even though it's the Praetor that's using the power. Okay? Very important to remember these things. It reduces the Overload X rule by 1 for your attacks. Now, that's important. Where that becomes important is you use this power and you pass. Let's say you decide before you declare your weapons, you pass your willpower check. All right? So you decide on my Saturnine Terminators, I'm going to overload my plasma bombards now. So they go from no overload to overload 2, right? Now they're down to overload 1 because of your power. Well, let's say you're about to shoot your Terminators, use the power, and you fail. Well, now the risk of overload isn't worth it in your mind, so you can choose not to overload your plasma. That's why it's important that you get to check on this power, you get to use this power before you declare your weapons. You can declare what weapons you're using after you know if you failed or succeeded, so after you know if you get a benefit from this. All right, all it does is it reduces your overload by 1. Now, unfortunately, most Saturnine units are overload 2 when they have overload. That includes the Dreadnought, the Saturnine Dread. That includes all the crazy Saturnine weapons, the Disintegrators, the Overcharged Plasma, all those weapons. They're overload 2, which means that there's no way to completely ignore overload on these weapons. And as much as I want to love the Disintegrators melt through your own squad so quick when you overload with them that it's hard to justify even just reducing the overload by 1, because the possibility scares me. I hate destroying my own squads, which is weird playing Thousand Suns and working with perils, but that is a thing. So there are synergies though, which include Moritats and Plasma Gun squads. So if you don't want to take your Aether Fire Plasma, if you can join those to a squad, those units to a squad that can, like an Osirian squad, and use Psychometry, the Moritat benefits a lot from it. Kind of a weird model to stick with Saturnine Terminators, but they benefit from it. Plasma Gun squads, you overcharge them, the overload 1 goes down to no overload. So there's some decent synergy with some specific things there. The second power for Osirian is Machine Empathy. So Machine Empathy is a power, and it's in the effects subphase of the start phase. It's our third one. It's in the effects subphase. Okay. Now remember, 1 power per turn. That's all you get. Okay. We can't use Psychometry and Machine Empathy in the same turn. All right. And talk about maybe which one you might want to use here in a second. You target your own unit if they have the Thousand Suns trait. So again, it's not everybody has to have the Osirian Arcana. All right, one model with the Arcana, you can target you target your own unit. Anybody can benefit from this. What it does is, if you're successful, you pick a model in your own unit and you heal a wound. That's all it does. All right, just one wound. No more, no less. You heal a single wound. There is a bit of an issue with this when it comes to the math. All right. So I actually did the math out on this. And let's say you're dealing with like a Saturnine Terminator squad. Okay. Saturnine Terminator squad, you cast this power, you have a percentage to fail, percentage to succeed, percentage to perils. After it's all said and done, it all averages out to about, you have about a 50-50 chance of like causing a wound to yourself, and less than that of dealing a wound, or of healing a wound. There is a higher chance of causing a wound to your own unit between all the perils than there is in actually healing a wound. And I think the only time that balances out is when you get to someone like Magnus. But Magnus can't even use the Osirian powers. He only gets the Arcanas in the Liber Hereticus. So yeah, it's the math doesn't work out on this ability. A single wound in an emergency, maybe will save you a game. I'm not sure if it'll get to a point where like, if only I can heal one wound on my model. Like, it's I don't know. If it does, if somebody uses that and that wins you a game, please tell me the story, because that sounds epic. But what I see here is more of a risk than any kind of potential reward, based on just like the simple math of how the ability works. If it were D3 wounds you got back, I could see that. That to me would make it worth trying a lot of the time. But as far as just gaining one wound back in your squad, I'm not seeing it. Not seeing the usefulness of this. Cool Arcana though. I like this because this gives me hope for the future. It's cool. It's thematic. The psychometry I can see uses for. The machine empathy, maybe not so much. Yeah, causes more wounds than you heal on average. So, too bad. And it is, it's a last resort. So, I forgot how many bullet points I had, so I wanted to get this out before it skipped ahead. All right. So, let's put it into practice. What do we take from this? We have these Arcanas. What kind of information do we take from this when we're playing a game, we're putting together an army? Let's talk about it. First, it is always worth the 10 points on every squad. I can't think of a situation where I would purchase a squad and be like, man, I don't want to give them a cool weapon and ability to help my entire army. Just doesn't make sense to me. Always worth it. Always plan out the extra points. Your army's going to be more expensive than your opponent's. It's always worth it. Most of just the weapons are worth the 10-point charge that they have, but then you also get a power on top of it. Always worth it. Always take an Arcana. Another thing, and people might hate me for this, you gotta read the core rulebook. You have to memorize the timings. You have to memorize the sub-steps, the steps of attack. You have to memorize the sub-phases of the turn. You have to know when things happen, or you're going to put yourself at a severe disadvantage, or you'll possibly be putting your opponent at an unfair disadvantage by misplaying the rules. So we're Thousand Suns players, we read, okay? And you have to read these rules. You have to know when your timings happen. You have to know when things happen. And there's we're going to get into a psychic power episode, or psychic how to use psychic powers. There's so much nuance and little things that are difficult to keep track of, that you have to know in order to like understand all the little interactions with the rules. Because a lot of things are explained in the rules. They're just difficult to find, and maybe sometimes difficult to just to just see like at a glance. So learning your core rulebook is very important. Okay. Now, next thing, join characters to units with different arcanas. So this is something you plan in your list building. You say, hey, I want this Centurion to go with this squad. I want this Chaplain to go with this squad. You plan that out, and you always mix and match your arcanas. Always different arcanas between the two units, all right? If you have 2 characters going in a squad, you have 3 arcanas between them. You are encouraged to mix and match. The rules specifically tell you that it's 1 weapon per arcana per turn, all right? Some of them have reactions, some have powers, a lot of them have weapons. All of these interact and synergize, and that is one of the most loreful things, I think, in the entire Liber Hereticus, because that's how Thousand Sons fought in the books, all right? That's how the novels work. It's how they always fought, as always synergistic, always combined arms, always different cults working together. That's how they function, and that's how you should be playing, all right? Mix your arcanas with all these units, all right? Specifically, a great way to do this, find an arcana with a good power, so Corvidae with fated shots, and an arcana with a good reaction, so Raptora with its Kine Shield, all right? That way every turn you can use the blessing, and then you can use the reaction. And then that way you really maximize the amount of usefulness you get out of a particular squad. So the Raptora reaction is so good. The 4+ through the whole shooting phase, incredible. So yeah, you can get a lot of use out of it, but you got to mix those powers. So I personally like the more generalist arcanas. So Athanaean is my favorite, just because you shut down the like weird kind of outside, I don't want to say like meta's a weird word, but like your opponent, a lot of opponents will take these weapons like, yeah, I'm going to pin this squad, I can pin them and do this, I can do this. I also play against a Night Lord player a lot, so they're all about using statuses. Being able to just shut down a status somewhere in your army is very strong. And also that same arcana can inflict statuses, right? They have the Emanation of Dread that can just put panic 1 token on units. So if I don't know what kind of arcana a specific unit should get, I lean toward Athanaean. That's what I do. It's beneficial to the whole army, not even just themselves. Dreadnoughts in particular love the extra weapons from arcanas. Pavoni and Raptora are probably the best with this. If I have a Dreadnought that's maybe like anti-armor focus, Raptora is great. Crushing Force, it's another anti-tank gun. That's what it is. All right. And the Dreadnought could probably eat the force damage better than a lot of units, but, especially if it's like the core book perils, if it ends up being that. But Raptora is good for anti-tank. Pavoni has the Blood Boil is an amazing anti-infantry weapon. That's just another infantryman dead from the Dreadnought. So the extra weapons on the Dreadnought's perfect for their arcana. They can fire every weapon, every turn. It's great for them. Load them down with crazy weapons. Last thing I think here, the math for Corvidae fated shots is just absolutely bonkers. You kill what you shoot. That's what happens with those. You pick a target, it's dead. All right, if the power goes off. Keep that in mind. Use it responsibly. All right, it's very good. Don't abuse it. Don't turn Thousand Sons into a toxic army to play against, okay? We still want to have friends when we play this game. So it's fun. It's crazy powerful. Use it wisely. All right. Oh, and you do not need to use your abilities every turn. This is something very important. I think a lot of players, when they start, it just every turn they're just rolling these dice to use these power, no matter what like tiny benefit they get out of it. Restraint's very important when you're using your abilities, your arcanas. Those wounds add up through the game. And you do have ways to pass it off onto the Castellax Achaea, but don't kill your poor robots. Don't do that. You use your abilities wisely. Use them when you need them. You have weapons. You can use the weapons without the psychic checks. Make sure you have a use for your ability before you start rolling dice and risking the lives of your legionnaires. All right? Restraint is very important here. Okay, so how I like to equip units, some basics here. Anything with breaching would get Corvidae. I don't always take a bunch of breaching weapons, but If it has breaching, it's a natural fit to give it Corvidae, especially breaching shooting weapons. Breaching melee weapons don't benefit from Corvidae because of the shooting ability, but breaching weapons naturally fit with Corvidae. Tacticals and those more utility units go for Athanaean, and we talked about that. Those backline units, maybe they don't have big guns, maybe they don't, they're not a melee unit. They're kind of sitting back and maybe not, they're holding objectives, doing other things that are, more like utility pieces. Yeah, and Athanaean's great for them. They support the army. Raptora and Pavoni are great on frontline units like Terminators. Raptora is so good on Terminators. They're so hard to get through anyway with a 2-up, 4-up, or a 2-up, 5-up. And then you just give them that extra 4+ Shroud save. It makes them very hard to shift. Pavoni's also nice. The Blood Boil can be a useful thing when you jump in, but also the +2 toughness is great. Terminators sitting at toughness 7 are pretty disgusting to fight, to shoot against. But again, Pavoni is against just one attack, so something to keep in mind. Raptora and Pavoni for Terminators. Characters pick based on what unit they join. So always try to have an Arcana with a power combined with an Arcana with a reaction. We talked about that. Mixed units, it's loreful. It makes sense. It tells a story, and it's what's supposed to happen in the rules. You are encouraged to do this, so do it. All right? Synergize your characters with the units they join. Dreadnoughts want weapons, right? We talked about that already. Find weapons that complements the weapons they have. Dreadnoughts cannot split fire. So, find weapons that, if they're already shooting at tanks, find the anti-tank weapon, use it. All right, pretty simple. Pyrae, the use I've found for Pyrae, the best use I've found from are assault squads. Assault squads get to pick their targets more than most units. You can make a case for Terminators or units and Land Raiders, but assault squads picking their targets and finding those units where those big, meaty, command squads or things where people have lots of different equipment on, throughout the squad, that's where Pyre is going to give you the biggest benefit. Or hunting armor. Hunting things like, light armor or medium armor, Sicarans, Predators, Rhinos, Demolishers, those kinds of things. Pyre will be best suited to those two roles, and I think assault squads do pretty well with those. When in doubt, so we talked about Athanaean on generalist units. We talk when I'm kind of not sure, I'll lean toward Athanaean, but something to think about. Raptora is a fantastic Arcana just because its reaction is amazing, and it has great anti-armor ability. So its actual weapon, the Crushing Force, is fantastic as an anti-tank weapon. All right, so another thing I just want to talk about, I had this thought. Future Arcana possibilities. We are 2 Journal Tacticas in, and we already have a new Arcana. There are possibly 3 years, possibly more. Not speculation I don't want to get into, but there's a lot of time for new journals to come out, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for more Arcanas. It's an easy 1-page rule. There's no new models. There's no pictures that need to happen. It's just an easy rule to add into the game. All right, we already got Osirian, so I want to list just a couple of things I think would be cool Arcana possibilities. So, first one, Order of Ruin. So we all thought Osirian would be like the Order of Ruin, kind of the Tech Marine based Arcana, but it's specifically Saturnine stuff, so not quite the same. But a Tech Marine based Arcana that focuses on something to do with vehicles, I think would be really cool. All right, let us synergize with the vehicles a little bit. I know it's not something a lot of Legions do anymore in 3rd edition, but having something that's good on Tech Marines or like those kind of tech units, Master Signals, those kind of things would be cool. Order of Ruin type stuff, awesome. Order of the Blind, this is like your scouts, snipers, spies, recon type units. Some kind of unique Arcana for that would also be really cool, and I don't even know what that would look like. Ignoring shroud saves on units maybe as a power, maybe a cool sniper ability for a weapon, something like that. Like an Order of the Blind type Arcana could also be a fun ability. And we already have the Amatara Occult Cabal, which are, I think they're just Corvidae is all they are with faded shots, which is perfect for snipers. It's actually incredible for snipers. But Order of the Blind, a unique Arcana, could be very cool. Also, if we get a like late heresy demon Magnus kind of adjacent rules like World Eaters and Emperor's Children have, maybe we could get rules for the more modern cults, the more like rubric leaning cults. And I looked at the 40k cults, and there's change, duplicity, knowledge, magic manipulation, mutation, prophecy, scheming, and time. So many cool possibilities in that. That's a lot. But there could be a lot of cool, like just a whole new suite of magic abilities for like a I don't even know what you call it, the like malefic, basically Thousand Sons. Could be incredibly cool. So we'll have to see what the future brings with that, and whenever we get Magnus transfigured or whatever he'll be called, what kind of thing they'll do with that. But that could be very cool possibility. All right, in conclusion, there is a ton of variety and options in this army. They're not simple. All right, this is not a simple army to play. You're going to be thinking really hard through most of your games for a long time. You need to read your core rulebook to understand the timings of your powers, all right? Like, again, read your books, guys. We're Thousand Sons, we read books. You got to read your books, and you got to understand them. Thousand Sons are definitely the most versatile legion. I don't think many people would argue with that when they actually look at the Thousand Sons rules. We have 9 more pages of rules than anybody else in the game at this point, and they're all dedicated to making every one of our units unique. We can run a tactical squad 6 different ways. It has 6 different roles when we run it that way. Like it's completely changes how your army is played. Extremely versatile legion. Might be one of the strongest legions. I don't like to rate power. I don't play competitively, but I feel like if you want to play as a really toxic person, this legion can do it. I tell people, use restraint, all right? It's better to have friends to play with than to win a game and lose your friends, okay? So we use restraint on this. I do feel like Thousand Sons are possibly very underrated by a lot of the community right now, but I also play Thousand Sons, so of course I would say that. But just something to keep in mind. Let's use some restraint, but you can come up with cool combinations to tell people about it. There's a ton of possibilities for future rules for Thousand Sons. Just the Arcana, not even new units and stuff, just the Arcana. We can have almost a dozen of them, I think, is what I just listed on the previous slide. So there's a lot of possibilities for future rules for Thousand Sons. All right, last thing, bonus slide. Someone requested that they got some army photos of my army. I'm going to start with one. And this is just my pre-3rd edition army. It's a wide shot. This is all of my army minus my militia. That is about 9,000 points of Thousand Sons, maybe 8,500 Thousand Sons, and I have about 1,500 of Solar Auxilia there on the left. But yeah, it's just a wide shot of my army I took. I got a lot of stuff there. I have added another, I don't even know, 2,500 points of painted models since this picture was taken. But I think every video I'm going to put some pictures up of my army. I'll share some things and what I'm painting. But that's the army as it stands, the painted army as it stands. So I appreciate you guys watching. I really do. If you stayed through this whole video, I seriously appreciate it. It was a meaty one, but I hope it was informative. If I got something wrong, if you have things to add, you have other units and synergies you would like to tell me about, please let me know. Send a comment, post a comment, send me a message, do something, let me know about it, and we can talk about it in the future. And I would be happy to try out some of your guys' crazy ideas. Next episode, we are going to talk about how to use psychic abilities, and it might be another long one because there's a lot of nuance with the core psychic rules. There's a lot of weird things that you have to keep in mind, differences between, just so much. I'm learning stuff every day just reading about these, so hopefully I can give you guys a good breakdown and we can answer a lot of questions here. I will ask, guys, that if you do like the video, please let me know. Please, help the channel out if we want to get the word out. I do stream weekly. I stream almost daily on Twitch and YouTube on this channel. A lot of times I'm painting Thousand Suns or commission work. So if you want to come say hi, you want to talk tactics, you want to talk about heresy stuff or any really gaming stuff, I am game for all of that. I just chill and paint, guys, most days on stream, and would love to meet new people. I love hearing from you guys. And last but not least, I do want to thank my Patreon. We have a really solid group. I got names listed below. Just an awesome group of people supporting me and my work, and I appreciate it, guys. I could not do this without you, so thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody.